It's a great pleasure to introduce the first of our special talks. And we have with us Camilla Van Deurs, who is a partner from Gehl Architects, who are an internationally renowned firm of innovative architects. And she's going to talk to us with some very, very interesting slides about what some of their projects have brought. So without further ado, I'd like us to welcome Camilla. Thank you.
Hello. It is such a privilege to be here. I can just feel the room excited with so many people that are passionate about cities. I won't talk about cities. Well, yes, I will. But I will talk about people. One of the things that's quite particular to our office is that we are architects, but we see people as our client, and we design spaces for people. We're a small firm, about 35 people based out of Copenhagen. This is only half of the staff on Parking Day. Some of you might know Parking Day. Down in our office, because we fly and we travel quite a bit internationally, so no one is ever at home. We're a young office. Last year we had 16 babies, so we try our best to keep the European population high. But rather than giving a lot of answers today, because I'm sure that you will be working very hard and have so many interesting questions put forward to you, I would like to pile on top of that and ask 3 questions here today. And the first question is, what do we actually care about in cities? Because a lot of you might be municipally engaged or hired, and you know so much about your cities. You have stats and data about where all the traffic is and where the businesses are and where the trains run, everything. But very seldomly do we actually know something about the people of the city, other than maybe the demographic changes or whether or not they're employed. And the people of the city are actually our most important client. And so one of the things we are interested in is where people are, and particularly where they're not. This is, I don't know if there's someone from Copenhagen here. Hi. This is, I'll use my own hometown as the worst example, because I can do that. I can criticize my own town. This is one of our not so very successful urban harbor fronts, right in the central city. And right across from it is this. And why is this interesting? And why are there so many people there? That is one of the things we try to investigate with our clients around the world and try to look really carefully at how people are using cities. As said, we work quite a bit everywhere, and what we find is that the general client is the same. So there might be differences across Europe. If you come from northern Finland, you might not want to be as close to others as if you are from Italy. But most generally, we are about the same. And a lot of this data we collect, a lot of the empirical data we collect in cities across the world, we can actually use then to compare and to set measures and to define success. Because often in a city we get a question of what is enough public life? When do streets actually work? When do streets feel unsafe? And by gathering all this information, which is basically about people and how people use spaces, we get an idea. And we've developed this method over the last 40 years using Copenhagen as our case story, as our laboratory. This is the city center. And you can monitor, and the Copenhagen development has been quite slow. It's happened over 40 years. Most of your cities have sort of sped up this development, but you can monitor both the development of the pedestrian streets, of the spaces, but also how people use them. And you can make all these interesting correlations when you have lots of data. This is, for instance, the number of cafe seats in the green and the number of parking spaces in the city. And one of the claims we often get is that if you take parking and cars away from cities, the shops will die and no one will come there. I think some of you might have heard that argument before. That's not true. 20 years ago, people went to the city to shop. Today, people go to city centers to be in the city. 81% of people who come to the city center go there just to spend time and to meet other people. So our city centers are changing function. And a lot of cities are trying to deal with this change of importance for the city centre. This is one of the cities we've worked with. It's Brighton in the UK. And one of the more prominent streets where the theatre lies was a standard street, you might say, maybe not that interesting. And we did one of the first shared space projects in Britain there, which incorporated a lot of public furniture, but also traffic possibilities for cars and for bicyclists, and even buses can go through the street, and opened up to a park on the other side by incorporating a long bench. And all of these pictures are very nice. We put in nice furniture and nice paving. But what's really interesting is how people adapt to these spaces, how they use them. So some of these traffic audit measurements from afterwards are really interesting. 22% more people cycling, 150 increases in pedestrian activity, 150% more people walking in the street, and 600 increases in lingering activity. And what is lingering? Lingering is sitting and enjoying time in a space, being there simply because you like it. And that's why this cafe number is actually very interesting, because who pays €8 for a cup of coffee in a place that's unattractive? A lot of cafes and people lingering in a space is a sign that it has high quality and that we like to spend time there. And so once people are there, the streets become living rooms. They become spaces where all other types of things can happen. My other question regards maybe a new role, or maybe the reinvention of an old role for the urban planner. In the 1850s, urban planners took great responsibility in sanitizing our cities after the big epidemic outbreaks. And today we have new challenges. Obesity, one of the largest health threats across, and again I put Denmark here, which is the lower one, just to criticize ourselves as well. Obesity and related diseases, one of the largest threats to our societies, and very, very expensive for municipalities and governments everywhere. One of the cities we've worked with, Mexico City, a city that on average its inhabitants spend 4 hours a day in traffic, 4 hours away from their families, and a city where they are the second fattest in the world. And a city, I'm just clicking one more time, this probably should come up, where they are losing their sense of smell due to traffic congestion. Serious, serious effects. The question is, can we do something about this as planners? I'd argue that we can. I don't know how many of you have a fitness card. I won't ask you to show your hands, but I do, and I never ever use it. My husband's really mad about that. But if our cities and our streets are planned to move every day, there is the likelihood that we will spend more time exercising. And we can see that correlation very, very clearly across the globe. So in the red, we have the obesity level, and the green, the public infrastructure for bicycling and walking. Very clearly, if you offer good spaces, good networks, people will use them. So the courage to do some of this is really important, also in health terms. In my own city of Copenhagen, 37% of everyone bicycles to work. In the city center, it's up to 85%. Very impressive numbers. We're hoping to make them even better. And that's because everywhere cycling is prioritized. The snow is cleared first on the cycle tracks before the roads. And And the whole way the municipality has worked for the last 30, 40 years has really been about increasing the network as a day-to-day method of transportation. So the cycle lanes are not in the parks. They have become in the parks in the past years, but they are primarily on the streets where people need to go on their everyday lives. And we can see that this has a big difference. People who exercise regularly, and we all know this, they live up to 7 times longer. Or 7 years longer, sorry. 7 times is a bit much. 7 years, I'd like to do that. That's a miracle pill, isn't it? But the thing that really matters to us as city managers, and as maybe also on a more regional and EU scale, is actually the money, the economy behind this. And we find in a city as the 3rd largest city, Odense, in Denmark, that they have invested 20 million in cycling infrastructure, but gained over 33 million in proven health benefits. And so you can say that every time you invest money in something else than cars, you're actually winning money something in another pocket. And that's difficult because cities are not just about the budget for the transport commissioner or for the planning department. Cities and countries are much more complex. So we have to think creatively about how we use funds and maybe think creatively across the different sectors in our city. My third question is, can we shift the discourse about sustainability? Sustainability is a buzzword. I don't know how many times we say it at every conference we go to. But what does it really mean? And should we maybe be talking about sustainability in another way? We all know this classic scheme from the Brundtland report, how to talk about sustainability and different levels. This, again, is our worst example from my hometown of Copenhagen, the Ørestad, our new carbon neutral, green buzz, all the buzzwords you can put into it, part of the city. But it's actually a horrible place, I'm sorry, that doesn't work. And why? Because the individual buildings have all the green factors and all the diplomas you need to make it sustainable, but together, all of these different factors are worthless when you have a public space that looks like this. When there's nowhere to go, which means that no one will come there, and everyone who comes, even though the metro is right there, a lot of people actually come to this carbon neutral part of the city on their private cars. So instead of talking about sustainability, maybe we should talk about livability. About proximity, about smart density, about local issues rather than global issues. The question in cities is, what can we do? And how can we change things? And we had an opportunity to start over. It's not very often, fortunately, we have that. But we've been working with Christchurch in New Zealand since 2009. And a couple of years ago, they had a number of devastating earthquakes, which ruined almost 30% of the central city. So the city that looked like this, looks like this. This is sort of what you can call earthquake porn pictures. They're fascinating to look at. And the city invited us to come and to make a public process where we talk to everyone in the city and ask them, if we are starting over, what kind of city do you want? And we did a lot of processes where we invited everyone to come to participate. We had Lego workshops with the children, we had big conferences, we had internet web portals, and we had, at the end of this process, which was very fast, 106,000 comments from the general public on how they wanted their city to develop. 106,000. It was a very clear indication, and it was a very powerful tool for the politicians then to go and say to the national government, this is the kind of city we want. This is our mandate from our people. And what did they want? They wanted a city that was low. They wanted a city that was green, that was reconnected to the natural landscape, that had good public transit, that had lots of shops, but in a very dense, tight city center. They wanted a city with character. And I think that's a claim most of us can make. But very seldom do we actually have the chance to listen, and listen carefully to our inhabitants, and actually do what they tell us to do. So in this plan, in the city of Christchurch, every single tree that is planted on a corner or will be planted on a corner, you can trace that comment back to the person who asked for that tree. And that is taking citizen participation seriously. My last argument is that we can change. I know it's the 50th year right now of Martin Luther, and Barack Obama is making a famous speech today. Yes, I believe, and yes, we can change, to use those very, very large words. And one of the methods that we find quite energetic and efficient in doing that is prototyping, actually showing people what you can achieve. We've been working with the City of New York for 6 years, since 2007. And the main goal behind that program was really developing an eco-friendly, green, great New York. But when Michael Bloomberg, the mayor of New York, talks about a green city, he's not just talking about sustainability, he's talking about dollar green, about making a city that can compete against the aggressive tiger economies of the East, and we all sort of can maybe relate to that in this very challenged financial market that we are in Europe as well these years. So the plan was very much also about promoting businesses, promoting possibilities while developing and pursuing sustainability. And very simply, it was about reevaluating how we use the spaces in our cities. One example here, Times Square, maybe one of the most famous spaces in New York. This is what Times Square used to look like. 90% of the space was for cars, only 10% for people, which is quite an unbalance. And we took out the space that was before used by cars and made pearls on a string connecting Broadway across the grid. And this is only one pilot project of today. There are more than 40 pilot projects all across the city, also in the boroughs where people live. And that became streets that they were maybe not perfect from the first day, because they were one-to-one experiments of how our cities could change. And they became ways of showing the people, this is Times Square again, what the spaces could be. And based on that, we could change things. We could interact with the public. We could add more lanes for taxis. We could add more bicycle lanes. We could put out more chairs if the businesses wanted that. So it was a real one-on-one dialogue using the city as a laboratory. This is just I like this diagram a lot. It talks about the traffic time in Manhattan, that it actually improved by 6 and 7% by taking out some of these very busy intersections. So some of these projects that make spaces for people are actually better for cars and better for traffic congestion as well. And by simply monitoring how people interact with these new spaces, it gives the administration, it gives the politicians, it gives the people who have to spend the money really, really powerful tools to make these changes, to make them permanent, to have the courage to continue that process. And so doing this is really about investigating how do people interact with these spaces. So 44% decrease in injuries, 42% of people shop in these spaces, much more. The businesses have flourished. All of these factors and numbers are really a powerful tool for starting to change. And my claim is, to use an old quote from Frank Sinatra, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. Thank you.
Camilla, that was fantastic. We really have a sense of what prototyping and exemplifying the city means from what you've said. It was wonderful. Can we just have a second round of applause? I thought that was absolutely terrific.